In this video, I'm going to show you how to finally unlock the 50mm lens so you can make photos with depth, variety, and atmosphere. Most photographers give up on the 50mm too soon. To them, it can feel boring. So it's not wide enough to feel dramatic, it's not long enough to feel cinematic. And once you know how to work with this, boring lens, it can actually become quite a flexible and powerful tool for you to use. And in this video, I'm going to explain to you how to do that. Firstly, comment below, do you use 50mm or not? And if you've got any tips of your own, please leave those in the comments as well, because people really like reading those kinds of comments. They're useful for everyone. 35 and 85 can often end up being treated much like people do with a zoom lens. So you can get the wider look and the more telephoto look, but you don't have to do as much work with them. So now I'm going to show you what I do with a 50mm with some examples to get more interesting looks out of a 50. The first thing I want to do is just to fix the most basic standard 50mm composition. Let's say we're talking about portraits here. So what they end up doing is sort of tilting the camera down. I mentioned this in a previous video, but you need to try to get the lens relatively flat to your subject. The reason for this is because if the picture is just slightly off, the tilt is just very minor, you kind of almost don't notice it, but your subconscious picks up on it. And it just makes the picture look a little bit off and a little bit weird. You could fix this in editing by using something like the transform tool in Lightroom, and that distorts the picture still. So it's not really quite the same thing. It's better to get it right in camera because you're going to get the true perspective and not start stretching heads and other things to correct vertical lines. Now, the next technique that I want to talk to you about is getting low. If you want to make something a bit more dramatic with a 50mm, you have to get lower, but quite a bit lower. You have to exaggerate things more than you would do with a 35mm. And also I kind of think that this is really where mirrorless cameras become really useful, because you can get away from the camera and get the camera down lower far more easily. So if you look at this picture, I'm standing on the road here, and this is still clearly a 50mm photograph, but the camera is down almost at my waist height, so I'm kneeling on the ground to take this. The reason I'm doing that is to emphasize the road and make it look bigger, and that gives us a better sense of scale and depth. If I shot this at my eye height, it would look weird. It would feel tilted downwards and it would just look wrong. And that's what I'm talking about here, because that would then look like the picture doesn't make sense and it would feel off because the angles are wrong. And this is why a lot of people don't like 50mm. It puts you at distances where the image distortion you get when you change your height and your angle doesn't look like enough to be deliberate, but it's too much to still look good. So when we get to much lower angles and really force those lines like this, it just looks better. And again, I'm keeping that sensor flat. That's really important at 50mm, unless you want to exaggerate the angle, which I'll show you now in this next picture. Again, this is a low angle image, so I'm basically almost on the floor. So I'm having to really force the angle, and then I can get a dramatic effect like this. It's not going to work to just, squat slightly. Let me give you a different example now. This one is from the same shoot. I got extremely close to my model here, kind of almost too close for comfort. I'm right up in her face, but notice again, I'm staying at eye level. I'm doing two things here. I'm getting extremely close, but I'm keeping my height at eye level, and that sensor again is completely flat. The reason I need to do that is to keep the perspective looking correct. Otherwise, it's going to look weird. When I do it like this, it looks a little bit more sort of cinematic looking, doesn't it? It's taking on some of the characteristics of a more telephoto lens, but I'm making a drastic move to get here. The other thing I'm doing is making sure the background behind my model is really far back. I've got a lot of depth in the image, and I'm not getting bothered by tons of structure behind the model. I'm using the distance from the subject to the background to create more background blur. And to do this, I've had to make a big shift from those low angle pictures to this one. a lot of people using 35mm and 85mm would get wider and tighter shots from one static position. Now that's fine too, but with a 50mm, you can still get this variety of looks without changing lenses and camera bodies, and it has a sort of more consistent look and feel of its own. But let me show you these two images side by side, and you can see the nice range that you can get from just one lens. And I love 35mm and 85mm too, but I really love the way that 50mm forces you to move and teaches you lessons that you're just not going to learn as easily with other focal lengths. And I think one of the beauties of working with a 50mm lens is that when you're focused on one lens, on one way of doing things, you spend more time thinking about composition and being caught in the moment, not thinking, I need to switch cameras, I need to switch lenses, I need to change settings. And I think that's why people fall in love with that experience with a 50mm. I want to show you the same techniques in the studio. What I'm often doing is using eye level technique at 50mm. Like in these examples here, I'm not moving super low, I'm just keeping the sensor straight and the camera is at subject's eye height. That gives a very clean and composed look. It's repeatable, it's consistent, it works. And I find I can do pretty much everything that I want to do with a 50mm lens. So for me, if I could only have one lens, it would be a 50mm, because I can just do everything that I need to do with it. If you like the way my work looks, I've created a full outdoor portrait editing workshop that shows you exactly how I edit my portraits in Lightroom from start to finish. This workshop will show you how to bring out depth, atmosphere, and mood in your outdoor portraits. A lot of photographers struggle because they only adjust exposure and contrast, but that won't give you the cinematic look that you're after. Once you learn to shape light, color, and depth in Lightroom, your images will start to feel intentional and more like they belong in a magazine. So if that sounds like something you want to master, the links are in the description down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys again in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.